Hello, my name is Dr. Maya Byfield. My business is The Phenomenal STEMist. I'm so excited to be here in Orange County because it's where I live. I live in Apopka, Florida. And I decided to make this business because I saw a need for underrepresented students to be successful in STEM, which stands for science, technology, engineering, math. And the best way I can do that is just provide products for parents to prepare them, whether it's a book or online STEM camps or just video podcasting. My goal is to transform this community, especially those who are underrepresented. And the way to do that is to help parents understand their children's minds and basically develop them at different stages of their lives to be prepared for a successful STEM career. Thank you so much. That's why I'm here.
Hi. Hey everyone, how are you doing? It's the phenomenal STEMist, and I'm with the crew. We got Jamal and Howard. What's going on, guys?
What's going on?
I could always count on my friends. Give me a song, friends. How
How many
many
of
of us
us?
have friends
Yes, yes.
we can
Okay,
depend?
depend.
Oh man, shout out to Kamoy. She couldn't make it tonight because she's out of town, but my brothers are here. My brothers are here, and we're just excited about this converse. I'm excited about this conversation. It's the first of the month of June. Before we get into the conversation about resilience, ain't no resilient like African Americans. African Americans, I believe, are the most uh, resilient Americans. Americans that have come through slavery to the point where they put a black man in presidency just within 200 or less than 300 years. I think that's amazing. And I want to talk about the role of STEM, African Americans in STEM, to celebrate Juneteenth this year. All month long, all month long. Listen, today's June. It's not too late. If you want to learn about Black history in the context of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, email me www.10year.me or just take that QR card picture there and enroll. It's an amazing program. I made it and I'm using artificial intelligence and all free resources to help you learn about scientists, technologists, engineers, mathematicians. Outside of the ones, of course, these beautiful black men right here who's computer scientists and microbiologists, and then myself as a biomedical scientist. There's just a lot more that you can learn about. And if you want to prepare your kids in STEM, please get this book. Get this book. Get your child ready, both in English and Spanish. How to prepare your kid. How to prepare your kid to be a successful STEM student from the womb to the university. All right. Enough with the commercials. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. I'm like, oh, it's you, Howard. I'm like, why is there like a? You see how to move it over a little bit. Move your camera over so that the green is all green. No.
I'm in a
Oh,
corner.
nice. Right there.
You
Right
prefer that?
there. It's
Okay,
perfect.
it's a
Yeah,
corner.
that's nice. That's nice. Which one do you prefer? Do you prefer close up or do you prefer far away? You're on mute, Jamal. I lost your volume.
No, it's good. I said I like that one right there. This is
This
good.
one is far away. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
I like this one.
yeah.
All right. Resilience. Building resilience in the face of adversity. I see a few people watching. My mother, of course, number one fan. Hey, Ma. what's going on. But two other people, I see about three people watching. Who's watching? Say hi. Say hi, y'all. Say hi. All right, building resilience in the face of adversity. We're going to start with this question. What does resilience mean to you, especially as a STEM professional navigating high pressure environments? That's a loaded question. What does resilience mean to you, especially as a STEM professional navigating high pressure environments? I'll start and then y'all can follow. Ladies first. I feel like the type of environment that I'm in right now is easy breezy. I'm an academic scientist. I teach students. I've been teaching for almost 20 years, so I'm pretty solid in my lectures. Um I don't have a publish or perish environment. So it's really good right now. I'm off for 3 months right now. This is amazing. I was talking to the fellas about playing volleyball and pickleball and just chilling, right? It's getting to the point where it's kind of boring, right? But when I was in graduate school, and it was a publish or perish. Like you had to have a paper to graduate, right? You couldn't graduate without a first author paper. You had to take high intense classes and pass them. And but when you're smart, you could do that. What was difficult was experimentation that it didn't always work. Like I call science a boring roller coaster. You have like one up and down, and then it's just boring. And then you get another one, and it you don't you have to be resilient because when experiments don't work, but you have to publish or you won't graduate. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure. And so to me, resilience is being able to handle failure, things not working and still pushing forward. Even if there's like threat of no promotion, no graduation, things like that. What about you guys? What does resilience mean to you, especially in the context of a STEM professional?
Yeah, I guess I'll jump in. I think mine's a little similar. It's like with resilience. To me, I think of experiences I had when I first was starting, especially leaving like between kind of leaving school and then trying to get into business world and then trying to do some the programming. It's what I found is that you can't you have to be resilient to handle definitely the first part. But anytime you're learning something new in STEM or trying to get into it, because you're going to be jumping into a situation where even if you're a junior or just getting started, you're going to be with people who been in the field forever,
Mm,
and the pressure to like produce or to kind of know where you fit in is difficult sometimes. And so I think that's probably the toughest arena for for me when I was just getting in it, and even still now, like because with development or with anything, it's like you got to evolve or die, right? So
mhm.
anytime you're going into a new space, like you're new, and so you have to understand that, you're not the best, you're still learning, like you gotta go through the grind of getting in there. And so in that, there's still vulnerability, right? Because, you're not a master of the field. And so I think if you couple that resilience with the verb being vulnerable, I think that's a good way to look at it. And so being able to bounce back from that resiliency, like when someone takes advantage of that vulnerability, or like when you put it out there, or it's a tough spot to be in sometimes, so you have to kind of be strong enough to endure and
Right.
endure what could happen.
That's a common thread. Even though there's vulnerability, I hear vulnerability. I hear endure. I hear comparison to others and being afraid. Like all of that is involved in resilience. Howie, what's up? How do you, what does it mean to you?
Yeah,
Especially,
I'm thinking of, when you're occupying a space that is from an organizational standpoint where um the identity of the organization itself is sort of, based on resilience and has to um display, it lives off of being resilient, right? And organization, and your level of resilience is what actually, helps the organization to continue on. So it's about finding your niche, and then you being resilient in that, and then the organization sees you as an asset to their own resilience, right? And so you have to learn to adapt to the organization, to understanding what the organization values, and then, being that. And it's really cool when there's already alignment for that. Like when who you are and how you roll, in terms of, I know for me, like I love micro, like I love, I was really confident in the way that I did my work. I was really confident in doing analyses and so forth. And so, you know, I think that's part of it also, like leaning into what you do really well, and making sure that, and I think it just happens sort of naturally, where if you lean into what you do well, there's sort of an inherent resilience to that, right? Because you're gonna figure it out. You're gonna continue, just like what you mentioned about the science. It's a boring roller coaster, but because you love it, you're gonna stick to it. You're gonna stick it out. And then when you're able to display that, it shows that that you're dedicated to this thing. So it's having that stick to itiveness, but when it's connected to, what you do well, what you understand. That's one of those things that are inherent to STEM. It's like stuff that people really, that they lean into real hard, and they know that it comes with a confidence, and so there's a resilience that comes along with that.
I think that's why it's so important that kids get into STEM quick, because you can't just want to be a scientist or a physician or whatever late in life and not do well in it, because if you're struggling in it, can you imagine having struggle in something that you don't necessarily like because you didn't master it for a long period of time? Most people who like you are resilient in STEM are ones who, liked it from young, and because they like it, when stuff gets hard, they push through. Versus, I just want to make $1 real quick. Like, you can't want to get into science or any of those STEM fields for the money. And unfortunately, many people get into the fields for the money, but they're not able to be resilient through it, especially in high pressure situations, because they really didn't like it or they don't like it. So what you're saying is so key, Howie, about you gotta have that. It gotta be a part of your niche, and it's great when it's aligned, when you really love it, because when hard times come, you push through. More likely to push through. And I really believe
Yeah.
anybody could love it. I just think a lot of the times you gotta love it from young, when you're not intimidated by it. It's fun to you, and you
Mhm.
just gravitate towards it. You want to say something, Jamal?
No, I'm saying, yeah, you're spot on. Yeah, you're spot on.
Yeah, yeah. Can you share a specific moment in your career or education where you faced major adversity and what helped you bounce back? I remember when um it was like my fifth year, maybe my sixth year. I graduated, and it took me 6 years to get a PhD. It's 2 years for my master's degree, The way it works is you take classes your first 2 years and you do a qualifying exam and get your master's degree 2 years. And then after your 2 years, you have solidified yourself in the laboratory and you work as a scientist until you do enough experimentation that you solve something that is novel, we call it. Novel means that it's new. It's not in the textbook, it's new. It's a new scientific discovery. And that's not I don't care how smart you are. You got to get experiments to work, right? And like my 5th year, I started to get it rolling and I was able to get a first author paper. And so that was like, hallelujah, everything is good. I feel confident. I'm going to graduate. And, but then all of a sudden stuff stopped working. Stuff stopped working and I couldn't get experiments to work. And it was so frustrating because now I'm feeling like, oh my God, I might not graduate. Um, What was funny, at the same time, I was going through a really bad breakup. So stuff's not working. I'm going through emotional turmoil as well, all at the same time. It's funny, this is around the time where I met Howard. I met Howard around my 5th, 6th year of graduate school. So I'm going through all of this. What helped me bounce back was the failure. My PI, we call it the principal. He said, "Okay, things aren't working anymore. You got your paper already. You can go graduate." And so, and so I was able to lock myself away. I left the lab. I started to write my dissertation by myself, and I didn't have any like I focused in because I had gone through a breakup. And usually, when I go through emotional breakups, I can even further like really key in. I don't got to worry about nobody. And that's what, so failure is what propelled me. Failure is what made me bounce back. When things stopped working, my boss let me go ahead and start writing for my dissertation. When I got into a terrible breakup, I was able to focus on only my dissertation. And that's what made me do success. It was failure. So don't be afraid of failure in this resilient story. What about you guys? Can you think of a specific moment in your career where you faced major adversity? And like, what helped you bounce back?
I'm gonna use this one, especially for, it's just like we're in graduation season right now and things like that. So I will reflect back on, because it's one of the major milestones for me, just getting through my degree, and that's just at the BS level, where I reached a point. I was on academic probation, and I'm using this example just to show that there's got to come a point where you determine that, okay, what direction are you really going in? What direction, what do you really want to get out of this whole thing? What do you really want to accomplish? And I was running track during my undergrad. And so my first 2 years, I spent running track as a student athlete. And I just remember I just kept getting hurt. I kept getting hurt. I kept getting injured and so forth. And I had to redshirt my I was in that was a D1 program, Division 1 program, and I had to redshirt the first semester, I think it was.
What's red shirt?
Um,
For
oh, I'm
those of us
sorry,
that don't know nothing about track sports.
about high level athletic. Nah, let me say. So
Just
that just
pickleball.
means so that just means that you how does that go again? You retain. So as a freshman, I'm not able to. I didn't compete. I didn't fully compete, but I retained my eligibility to compete. So it's like I'm able to. So if let's say I did my let's say I had the red shirt, so to speak, my entire freshman year, right? If I were to remain for a fifth year, let's say, I'd still have another year of
Got
eligibility
you.
at the
Got you.
collegiate
At the
level
collegiate
to
level.
compete. So good, so good. All right, sound is good. So that's what that would mean. So I had to do that for the first semester of my freshman year. Um, So, but long story short, I reached a point where I finally said, I think it was one of the semesters, I think it was about my junior year, so or going into my junior year, that my parents let me know that I was not going to be, they weren't going to be able to afford sending me back to school. And I did not have an athletic scholarship or anything like that. And so, nor an academic scholarship. I was on academic probation, and
Wow.
because I had, I was good with my academics, but I didn't have a handle on my study habits and things of that sort. Um, and so I reached a point where I had to decide. I was like, well, I'm not going to be an Olympian. Let's just, call it what it is. You know, Track and field dreams or whatever you had of, you know. So I had to hang that up and say, okay, this is what it is. I'm a student, straight up. And it was tough because I did sports. I did track and field throughout my 4 years in high school. So I was already regimented as a student athlete. But I had to decide, okay, if I'm gonna be a microbiologist, I'm gonna be a microbiologist. I'm going in hard. And I had to, and it got all the way to home, where at home it was a problem, like, and so this is when my parents said, hey, and it turned out that my sister was able to help, some other people were able to help. I was able to go back for that semester. But my parents said, hey, you got to figure out everything
Figure it
else
out.
after that.
Yeah.
And that's when I became really,
A
really
man.
focused. I became man. I call that my man up moment. That's when I said, okay, I'm gonna have to take my education into my own hands, take responsibility of it, and be that microbiologist that you said you wanted to be. And that's when my grades started. I started to focus. I started to hang out with the right people. I started to really lean in to my craft and to my field, figuring out what it is you want to do. Start working in the labs. Start doing all of those different aspects that contribute to the degree, and to the field aspect of it, to the practical aspect of it. Laboratory is huge for that. So it was just a moment of transition where you had to focus in order to get it done and be successful.
Can I shout out that these three beautiful black men, all these black men, professional on this screen right now. So yesterday I was on a different program, and one of the hot topics was the fact that men are lagging behind in education and in many things. And I talked about how the church can be involved in making it better versus just complaining, right? And I just remembered my vision for phenomenal STEM. If you remember how I started this just to interview black men only. The whole year I just interviewed microbiologists, engineers, and it's so crazy that bringing it full circle that we transitioned to more of a panel discussion, and I have three black professional men working in government, industry, right? It is amazing. It is possible. There are great examples. We just have to show it more. Jamal's laughing at me. So welcome, Bryant. Bryant just joined the Bryant just joined the crew just now, and
The one invite that I get to join,
Doing right in time, man.
and I'm late. That
What's
does
up,
not look
Brian?
good. What's up, fellas? It's good to be here. I can tell you that my apologies for being late. It
it's all
was
good.
life was just lifing.
Hmm.
I just got busy. It's been a busy time, but I'm fortunate to be here, and thanks Maya for the invite and also for the shout out. I think one of the things that black men fail to say that we need is constant cheering from our significant others, our black women, our community, because we're going out there, we're grinding, we're working, we're doing what we think is the extra stuff, going beyond, and to not hear it, and probably we hear more what we don't do than what we do. So just
Right.
for that moment of just acknowledgement, it goes a long way. Gives some of us the refuel to go out there
Hmm.
and start running through some walls, or in our old
Yeah.
stepping back and we're like, all right, I'll just walk around it this time. So Thank you.
Welcome. You can do great things, and I'm just glad you're here. You guys are willing, so that young people can see you as model. We're talking about resilience right now, and we're on the question of like a specific moment in your career or education where you faced major adversity, and like what helped you bounce back. Jamal, what can you think of one?
Not for me is every transition I've had, it's kind of been fueled, just like you kind of said, either by failure or just the will to want to, gonna do something different, want to, better, right? And so, I can think of when, when I started my business, right? Like, hey, I had to lean on stuff that I already knew, had to go and hone those skills and get after it, but it was one of those like I leaned into the STEM stuff that I already knew, right? I was already into IT and all that stuff, and IT would be considered STEM, I guess, but but
T,
yeah, so
T,
so
T
yeah,
instead.
so I leaned into that, and it worked out well because it was an easy transition because I've been doing it, what I mean, for since I was a kid, and
Yeah.
so that was an easier transition, but it was a mind shift to say, all right, this is what I'm gonna do because the other opportunities aren't out there, and so to go out there, start that, and then go and kind of produce. That was a it was a it was an experience. You know what I mean? And so although it was stuff that I kind of knew what to do, it was still kind of firing that up, and then transition from that into software developing. That was an interesting one because I knew how to develop software, but not professionally, right? I knew how to do websites, I knew how to do this, and so when you're getting in there with professionals, and it's just like you're lagging behind, it's like, all right, now I got to figure out my place in this, right? And you have to get in there, and so again, you're just like having to kind of fight against, the whole like, all right, can you do this? Can you, like where are you gonna land? And so there's a lot of different times, even interviews, right? When you're going to try to get a job, the resiliency that you need just for that. I've had all kind of experiences interviewing, you know what I mean? And so some great, some where you get people in there just talking crazy, right? You know what I mean? And so, yeah, it's just every one of those experiences kind of fueled me to kind of keep going. And I can't think of anywhere it's just like, all right, you know what, I'm gonna just go and randomly do this. Like right now I do stuff, but it's kind of piggybacking on things that skills I already know. But the major turning points in my life has been because it's like, hey, you know what, we gotta like we gotta either show that we can do this or we don't have no choice but to do it.
Awesome, awesome. I you made me think about like interviewing just now. Like I just went on in a daydream about I didn't interview much. Um, but when I did one interview where it wasn't good. I didn't know it wasn't good until they gave a post mortem, and they were like, yeah, this and that and this and that. I'm like, I never forget. Like it was, to me, it was a corporate one, and I personally think, anyway. I'm not gonna get into what I think, but it was kind of like I don't like when people insult me, or make me like I don't take criticism too.
Who
Yeah, see,
does?
I
Who
actually
does?
appreciate those. Like when, like that's actually something that doesn't happen often, right? Where they come and they kind of say, "Hey, this is what went wrong. This is what we saw." Like that's actually okay. But like I've had interviews where the people, like the guy, the like one that was the craziest. The dude came in, and first it took a while for them to even bring me back in for the interview. So then I come in for the interview, and I'm sitting at the table with like five guys, and then it can't start because the head guy's not there. The head guy comes in and just starts talking crazy, like, "Hey, you know what? Do you do this because you don't do this? Why are you even here and all this stuff?" And I'm like, like it was, and at that point it just happened so quick. I'm like, I don't even know what, and so I was like, man, this ain't for
And
me, no way.
yeah,
And so it was okay because you kind of understand, but there's just like there's when you're interviewing, it's a lot of stuff that goes on there. Like you have to make sure that all right, you're comfortable with the skills you have and who you are. because it gets crazy out there.
It'll hurt your feelings real quick.
Yeah, you don't know what you're doing.
This is a real conversation. I appreciate you saying this. And those of you out here watching, like, this ain't for play. This is it after school, and you get your little A's and your B's. Not, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, you don't just walk in and be like, "Yeah, here I am."
listen, I'm thinking, oh, I walked in, with my magna cum laude and my PhD degree. Listen, they ain't care about none of
No, they
that
don't care
kind of
about
stuff.
that. No. Can you solve these problems and can you get along with these people? You know what I mean?
To me, it's about getting along
Yeah.
with these people more so,
Hmm.
and I think they make a judgment as to
Hmm.
whether you're the right fit before you even shot.
Right. That's the toughest part, actually, and that's one of the things that I've experienced as well, where the challenge of like, and you know this, Maya, I went through a period where it's like, trying to be promoted in a particular area, and I think I was at a point where I was just like, I just want to be promoted in any area. I'm just looking for a promotion, right? Just felt like I've been doing this for a good long time, and that was a struggle because you'd go into interviews, and I think the thing is that you came out and didn't get it, and you had no idea
Why?
why.
Hmm.
You could not. And I've had instances where I've reached, they say, reach out, and try to ask the question and so forth, and I've done that in instances and gotten no response. And so that was a very frustrating time period where I didn't know why. And I was like I said, Jamal, yeah, that's good information to know. That's stuff that you can build upon. Absolutely. And I was really willing to, at least I believe I was willing to, but it was just a period of
Hmm.
silence in that regard.
That's frustrating.
And it was a matter of that took resilience, because it was a matter of sort of taking a step back and saying, okay, if that's not the direction, then what are we doing now? What's our focus now, right? And it was a matter of just going back and saying, okay, this is who I am right now, this is who I am still, and just continuing on. Try to put that resentment out the
Hmm.
door, try to put that aside, and just continue on. But that took some resilience right there, and
It
humility.
does. It does.
And I guess that's a part of the resilience, and patience,
Hmm.
and just continuing on and saying, okay, so what is my identity from this
Yeah.
point forward, or at this particular time?
Yeah,
you know
yeah, and it's a tough thing. One thing, and now this might be a side note, but one thing, I was having lunch with somebody, and he's kind of pretty high up, and so one thing that he kind of mentioned, and I think it's a true statement, is that if you want to really know what you're worth, like what your value is, what kind of, if what you think of what yourself and your skills, the fastest way to figure that out is to put your resume out there and see who gets it. You see what I'm saying? And so it's a surefire way, because if you feel like your skills are at a specific level, but you don't get any, you know what I'm saying?
All back.
Then that's one thing, but and so that's always kind of rung in my ear, because it's like, you always have to kind of think about that. Like, for us, we could put our resume out there and there's some stuff we know we're going to get. But there's some stuff that we probably think, all right, you know what, maybe I should be able to get that. But, it's kind of like, all right, you know what, you have to maybe do a little bit more for that or do a little bit different. And so, yeah, it's something I always think about. And, that's what I'm trying to kind of gear my son towards, is like, okay, you know what, you've done architecture stuff. That's great. You come out of school, you have the architecture degree. That's phenomenal. But, how are you going to separate yourself? Like, what are some of the architects doing now that you could possibly already be doing, so that you could check that off the box? So you already have that skill, you already have that thing in demand. Because, yeah, it's real out here. It's real out here.
Bryant, any specific moment that where you faced adversity? How did you bounce back?
Mm, there's so many, because hunger is a motivator.
Hunger.
I guess I have two instances. One, when I was at Oakwood, it was during the summer of '98. I believe it was Aliens was on tour, so I had to work four jobs in order to make ends meet. And I was even renting a car from the late great Dr. Malcolm, and that car had some challenges. But poor kid, I was willing to drive where the steel belts were showing. I was like, "What are these staples?" I was like, "What in the world?" But I during that time, I was a tour manager, marketing manager. I worked at a Papa John's. I worked at a daycare. And while I was working there, Tim Alston, who was the public relations manager, another black man, I felt as though I had entitlement. And let's be real, I had entitlement coming from a black school, black boy, working on a black degree in marketing. And I was like, oh, I'm in public relations with a black boss. You're going to, make sure I'm okay. He fired me.
Whoa.
He fired me. We had a difference of viewpoints, and I was let down. But it was actually one of the best things that happened because I thought that it was everything should be given to me just for being black, not being in prison, not on a trajectory to go to jail, but the trajectory to go to finish college with a degree. Now, did I finish magna cum laude? No. Summa cum laude? No. I just finished. What I had on
Thank
my
you, Lordy. Thank you, Lordy.
was the kente cloth from choir. There was no swag. I probably shouldn't even turned it to the right or the left. I don't even know which way to turn it. But because of that, I then was able to start my job as a federal government worker, and I had a degree. Again, black man, just thinking, hey, y'all should be grateful that y'all have a positive, happy black person working with y'all, and they put me in my place. And when I asked why, it was like, what makes you different than anyone else? There's a lot of other black people that would kill to have even the secretarial job that you have. You've got to set yourself apart. And so that's when I made the decision to get my master's in HR. And it wasn't that I wanted a master's, it was that I needed. And it took some tough love from federal workers to tell me, you ain't worth anything. You need to work hard and go to the next level. It's one thing to finish high school. We all are supposed to do it. It's one thing to finish college. That we grew up knowing that that was the next step. But when you're going after your master's, your PhD, what you are showing people is that you have a growth mindset, that you're willing to learn, that you're willing to adapt and fit into their culture while you're still blazing your own trail. And a lot of jobs are looking for that. And I'm hopeful that those coming behind us, the one thing I will say is write a killer resume to get yourself at the interview table. Then after that, sell yourself. Sell yourself. And that comes with knowing who you are, having a support system that feeds into you, but then also going through some rough times. Going through a struggle makes you resilient. You can't be resilient if you never had to figure out, how you going to pay your rent. You know, if you haven't been told no, if you haven't been passed over on a job that you know that you deserve and that you were killing.
Let me tell you.
Taking all of that, and what resiliency is taking the negative and using it as fuel for the positive.
Absolutely. It starts I started off this off with it was my failure that helped me bounce. It's taking that negative and giving you the power to bounce back. What I'm hearing from a lot of you guys though is this concept of comparison. Either comparing upward, Jamal, you talking about, oh, do I have enough as others? Or even Bryant, comparison is downward, like, well, at least I'm not like so and so in the hood. And I'm wondering if we gotta kill that comparison. That might be hindering our resiliency. You know, if we gotta go with what we've been created to do, push forward, not looking at somebody over here, not looking at somebody over here. But like how we talk about in track, you beat your last time. You're not worrying about anybody else's time. You're beating your last time. And I think that will be critical for resilience. Here's the next question. How do you maintain motivation and focus during long periods of uncertainty, failure, rejection? How do you maintain motivation? For me, I, I I've had a lot of failures, a lot of disappointments, a lot of rejections, and it's not necessarily just in the context of work, right? Um, what I've learned with rejection. So I grew up in college selling religious books door to door, and that if you want to experience rejection on all kinds of levels, sell religious books door to door. Okay. You want to get guns pulled out on you, dogs pulled out on you, cussed out, totally insulted, either sarcastically or directly. I've faced it all. Cops called on you, dodging, getting arrested. I've faced it. Yeah,
I
I
mean,
got
all you trying to
stories.
do is just introduce somebody to a different viewpoint of Jesus, and they calling the cops on you.
Yeah, because you did it in a no soliciting neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
You
All
did
right.
it in a no soliciting
You
neighborhood.
didn't follow
You
the
know what I'm
rules, man.
saying? Hey. So they, they had to, Maya, get in the car. Jump in the car and speed off like it was like we were some drug dealers or something. But hey, I've experienced it all. But what I will say is that in spite of rejection, what I've learned is the more powerful the no's, in most situations, the most insulting rejection that I experienced usually was the most powerful day. Like that day we got called the cops on. We were praying for sick people. We were selling hardcore books. We sold the most. The best times are usually the worst types of rejections. This is my in my 47 years. So those of you out there that's been you're going through a very hard type of failure, just know the next what's happening next is going to be powerful. And because of that, we would be like, okay, for every three no's, there's going to be another yes. We looked for the yes. The more hurtful the no, the more excited we got for the coming yes, because we knew the coming yes was coming. It's gonna come. It's gonna come. What about you guys? How do you maintain motivation in during these long periods of failure, rejection?
I mean, before y'all start, I want to say someone puts a gun in my face. I'm not motivated to stay. Motivated to walk away. That's not my calling. My calling is not to receive bullets. It's not. More power
It
to them.
wasn't in my face. They didn't put a gun in my face, but
That
they,
the gun is in
like,
the
listen, you get
okay.
off my property. Get off my property. Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you maintain motivation outside of guns in your face? Yeah.
I mean, I'd say I'm Ryan. Eating is a good motivator, right? So,
Hunger.
like you gotta like when you got a family, when you have stuff you have to take care of, then that's an excellent motivator. And I think it helps that the things that I'm like learning are things that that I'm interested in. Even if it's something that's just like, all right, you know what, this is like I don't really want to learn anything new right now, but all right, you know what, if I do, then this is what I would learn. You know what I mean? So those two things coupled together probably are it. I wouldn't say, I'm like I do it for the love of like learning something new. Like I think I'm at my best when I'm actually doing computer science stuff, right? Like when I'm going through and like pushing the bounds of the programs that I'm actually building, right? Those are the projects that are probably the most fun. But like yeah, you gotta eat.
Gotta eat.
Gotta eat, and
Got
you can't.
kids.
Yeah,
Married. Gotta eat.
gotta eat.
Yeah, and you became a STEM professional in your adult years. You had a family, right? You
Yeah,
were
but
in college when you
just
were married with kids, right?
yeah. But mine is a little different though, because like just like I said, I literally was building, like I was with computers from a
From
really,
young.
really young age. Yeah, you know what I mean? So like that stuff I was already kind of I always had an experience with. So, you know, it wasn't necessarily making money with it as a kid, but like I was doing stuff with business. I was, you know, so like it was, you know, I was pretty into it. So, you know, it would be like you doing biology when you're 13, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, you know, kind of
But it's
something
a
like that.
difference between doing biology when you're 13 and getting an academic professor
Yeah,
job.
yeah.
Two
No,
different
it's true. It's true when you actually have to do it. When you have to,
things. Yeah. Yeah. Howie, how you maintain motivation?
Gotta keep the first things first. I mentioned the example I mentioned earlier had to do with that the earlier part of my, the establishment of my career, my education, and so forth. And then I mentioned about how I reached a point that I feel of sort of stagnation. I don't really get too bent out about that time period of stagnation because I know what happened. I know sort of how I kind of I sort of know the elements that how I ended up there. And I was in a process of amassing, the information, the knowledge, and so forth. And I made a conscious decision to not go in a direction that I know was going to sort of springboard me a little bit forward. And the conscious decision I made was to really go in on family. Um, and this is so I talked about sort of like the earlier stages of your development and so forth. And then we sort of joked a little bit about how it gets real later on, right? And I knew for me that family was going to be huge. And so for in the organization that I'm with, the next element that would have really, I think solidified a lot of things for me in terms of the trajectory I was going had to do actually with international travel, had to do with conducting international inspections. And that's a nice springboard to the next level in terms of my trajectory that I was going in. And at the time I had my first child and of four, and I think we were about 2 years into marriage at the time, and I literally made a decision that I didn't want to go that route. I really wanted to be around for my child, especially my first child and my children. Really, I was like, maybe that stuff I could do later on when they're kind of not so much in the picture. They're a little bit, in school, doing their studies at that time. But in terms of their early stages, early years, I wanted to be there. And those types of that type of career adjustment, if you were to go into it, you're talking about being away from home for like 3 to 4 weeks at a time, maybe 1 to 2 months at a time. That's not who I wanted to be at that time.
That's
And
powerful.
so I knew that was one of those things that would kind of like, kind of set me back a little bit in terms of the trajectory. Um, so I'm just saying that's the type of stuff that comes up. That's the type of stuff that pops up where you're like, you have to again, right? I had to make a decision
Make a
back in
decision.
undergrad, right? I had to make a decision back in undergrad. Then I reached a point, had to make a decision. You reach these forks in the road, and you just have to remember, like I said, keep the first things first. It's like, okay, you're a STEMist. And if you're a STEMist, you're a STEMist to the core. It's not going anywhere. It really isn't, right? But you have to put into perspective how much of your, especially, and I'm saying you mentioned as Black men, right? Too many of us Black men, we got our careers at the core of our identity. And a lot of times that's what ends up hurting us, because you run into a lot of struggle. You run into these type of struggles and so forth. And if you get knocked down, you feel like your entire self is knocked down, but your career is not the core of who you are. And so
This is rich.
you have to be value oriented, because if you're not, because hey, that's another thing they're looking at, right? We talked about what they're looking at. And some organization, it may not be a godsend for you if the organization that wants you to be all about the organization and nothing else. That may not be a godsend for you. That may not be, if your values are family and so forth, and these other aspects of who you are, and they want to run you ragged just to get that dollar. That's, we got to keep first things first, and the core of who you are cannot, you don't want that to be shaken or taken away from you.
Oh man, this conversation is so rich. Such a rich conversation. Man,
I just
wow,
want
that
to
was deep.
piggyback off of what Howard said, and I think you asked what can the church do, and I think we need to get to a point where we are letting men know that your value isn't just in your provision, your monetary provision. Because, like Howard said, you lose your job, you lose the essence, the core of who you are, because we were taught early on that you need to provide, provide, provide. And if I think about it, during slavery, didn't think I'd have to mention slavery here, but during slavery, men were still men, regardless of their ability to financially provide for their family. It was just being there. It was being a voice of reason, the voice of accountability, sometimes standing in the gap, taking punishment that was maybe meant for someone else. So if somehow someone, you ask what the church can do to help future STEMists, future businessmen, just and people in general, let them know that their worth is not based on the number before the comma and the number of times they get paid. Um, so I just wanted to kind of piggyback on that because I was like, man, that's deep. Because I felt that. I haven't lost my job, but I felt that. So
Listen, and you men gotta believe it too, because Myron just did a post 2 days ago on social media saying it wasn't God's intention for the man to be the provider. That's not biblical. And the kind of backlash he got from men and women of disagreement, so nah, that's not true. That's not true. That ain't true. You gotta then also
Shout out to
believe.
the winning circle. Shout out to the winning circle.
Shout out
Get
to
your
the
shift together.
get your shit together. Shout out to listen, Myron, you owe me some kind of something for plugging your number. Here's the next question: what role does mentorship, community, faith, spirituality help in maintaining resilience? And so Bryant just alluded to that in terms of the church in general. Like the let people know that your identity is not based on your career. Your identity is not based on your career. What about mentorship or community? How can that maintain resilience or help us maintain resilience? When I think about mentorship, like I just know somebody else has been there, and that's why I have this show. Like, listen, you young people out there, you see us, talk to us, and find out ways, or just find out encouraging words. I was talking to a young person, not a teenager, a young adult, college student, and they're in their 20s and they're like, oh, I'm supposed to explore the world. I'm like, nah, this is the time to explore the world. I said, this is the time to finish school. This is the time to financially invest in the stock market. And this is the time to personally invest in yourself in terms of development. Like, man, if I knew what I knew now at 22, oh Lord. He's like, oh, I want to, because this Generation Z, they want to be retired now. Generation Z talk about retirement in their 20s. Okay, I said, well, if you want to be retired in your 20s, you invest in the stock market at 21. By the time you get to my age, you can live off the dividends and be really retired. You know, like, but you gotta develop the core of who you are and that age. And I think mentorship is critical in giving you helping you with the core and understanding that, so you can follow examples. What about you? Like, what about community? How can community help us maintain resilience?
Well, I think we have to remember that we are the community. And so the Bible says iron sharpens iron, so should men sharpen men. But we'll just change that. So should people sharpen people. We have to be willing to first be transparent, say what you don't know,
Yeah.
put it out there, and put it out there that you're willing to learn something. Second, validate that everyone has something positive to give. You may not agree with it, you may not subscribe to it, but there's everyone has something positive to give, and if they know that, they're more willing to share and more willing to receive. So I think community, it can't be us versus them. I think I tell everybody that I'm no different than someone else. If they were put in my shoes, in my walk, they would be exactly where I am, and I would be exactly where they were based on the opportunities and the circumstances. So the only thing that's different is opportunity
Yeah.
and circumstances. We're no better than anyone else. So we just need to remember that we all are a part of the community. Might be different levels, but that's only we just be a rung on a ladder, a stepping stone for someone to get to where they need to get to. And it actually builds better people. I've just recently became a mentor to someone in the federal government, and it's actually making me a better project officer because it's reinvigorating what I thought I didn't know that I do know in confidence, and encouraging and pouring into someone who will in turn pour into someone else, which
Right.
will then build that community that we keep saying, well, where's the community? How are we going to? We are the community.
We are the community. We are the community. And our legacy is built. You have no idea what our legacy will be when you pour into somebody, because it's exponential. I learned that from Maya Angelou. You have no idea what your legacy. You say, "What is my legacy?" You try to say, you don't know, because I think about the hundreds of students that I've poured into, and now all of those hundreds of students that I've poured into, they're pouring into multiple people. It's exponential. I'll never know.
Yeah.
I'll never know. But it's critical to, like you said, resilience, Bryant, because it just solidifies your core. Howard talks about that too. This your core value, like what, like I'm really into core values right now. Like, what is my foundation? And what are the pillars that extend out of me? I know it. I know it like my social security number. And truthfully, I just learned it in 2025. And honestly, if I'm real, it's extending out of a disruption in my life, a hurt experience in my life. A lot of the times, hurt experiences and failures, and they actually propel you to greatness. Don't be afraid of the failures, y'all. Don't be afraid of the hurt.
Doesn't pain denote healing in some places?
Mm. Or the need for, or the
Need for,
process.
yeah.
Okay.
Pain usually says something needs to be healed, and it,
Hmm.
and it triggers you to do something about it so that healing can happen.
Okay. Thank you, all STEMists, for correcting me. Yes.
No, but what you're saying is so critical, because if you don't know there's a problem, you can't fix the problem. So pain is the trigger to know that there's a problem so that healing can happen.
Yeah,
It's
Mhm.
because
That
critical.
because
makes
you can remain in pain, right? You pain can just continue on, like you just stay in pain and you're
Mhm.
not healing.
hmm.
So that's how you know. That's how you know. That's how you know it's the activator. It's an activator for the process, but something's got to,
Something's got to
to inform the process. But then the healing has to begin, and the healing has to be accepted. You got to, it has to, that process has to be accepted, even in the body. It has to. Got to accept the signal for healing to begin.
Yeah.
True, true, true. Yeah.
Yeah. Last question. What advice would you give to students or people in their early career, semester in their early career, who are struggling with setbacks and self doubt? What would you tell a student or early career STEMist? So I've been in this game. I was looking back, man, 25 years, and can't believe it moves so fast. It moves so fast. To the students, I would say, um, this too shall pass. It's gonna be all right. You think what you're going through is the end of the world. You think what you're going through will be like this forever, and it won't. It just won't. And so, since it won't, move forward. And I've been on this really big kick of late to believe in God's will for my life. I heard a sermon yesterday by Myron Edmonds. He getting a lot of love today, but he was preaching in Brooklyn yesterday, and it was so
Oh, Maya, you going in and out, I think.
Is
Is
that
it just
just
me?
her?
That's me. I said Restream doesn't want a plug for Myron.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You got to talk about somebody else, not Myron.
powerful. He said, "Why?"
Mm.
I think it's already gone.
Yeah, she, she's gonna come back though.
Yeah,
Are you back?
you almost did.
There we go. There
You're
we
you're
go.
you're back.
Oh man, I was like, there's such a
You
high amount.
you were like he said, then
Mhm.
that.
Devil is a liar. All right, so am I fully back? Fully back now?
There
Yeah,
we
but I
go.
wouldn't start off with Myron again. I would
I
just
ain't say this no more. Now I was. It was basically saying. It was basically saying, how can you speak doubt when the Holy Spirit of God lives in you? You have the presence of God inside you, and you're speaking doubt with His when He right there. Like,
Mm,
no, if whatever is supposed to happen will happen.
mhm,
Whatever's supposed to happen will happen. There is no need to be afraid. Just move forward. And I'm just resilient in that. I'm very, at least for today, I don't have no doubt about whatever's happened in my life. Spirit of God is living inside of me. And whatever is supposed to happen is gonna happen. What would you give
You
it? What
got you
advice
got
would
like
you
a
give?
you got like a 1 second delay in your audio from your video, or vice versa.
Okay.
Um, hmm. I struggle with that one. Um, because when it comes to informing, because I'm like, well, I'm really big on, so is this really you? Is this really where you're at? Is this really what you think you ought to be doing? Um,
mhm,
and when I say this, I'm really talking about STEM, because STEM is so broad, and sometimes you may be in an aspect of STEM that may be giving you trouble, but in actuality, it's just that aspect of STEM. It really is. It's there's something. It could be another area that you may need to take a step back and explore. And because I don't know if I need to tell you, man, just keep plugging through in that very same thing. You know what I mean? Because like I know people, I know one of my mentors when I was undergrad, she was supposed to be my mentor. She was like on paper to be my mentor for micro. And like I, right before I think the semester, and this me as a freshman, I think right before the semester within the second semester, she had changed her major to business. And it was just like, and we were still cool and everything because she was still a mentor because it was just like, in terms of school, just start being in college and so forth. But it was like, yeah, she was like, yeah, I took my first class in micro, started, the actual within the major. And she was like, yeah, nah, it's not for me. It was just like, oh well, okay. So I mean, I've seen that type of thing. And I know that it wasn't just a matter because I remember she was very smart. She went on, did business and so forth, and actually ended up working for FDIC. And it was just that wasn't her thing. And she recognized it sooner rather than later. Whereas for me, so for her, it wasn't like it was just hard. You know what I mean? Like it was more than just hard. There was more to it than just that. And for me, I was like, I'm gonna be a microbiologist. And it became hard. It was tough, but that activated, and there was some failure to it, but it activated me to push even harder because I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So I don't know if I can process that, if I can read that, discern that in an individual, in another student. I'm gonna have to be like, my instruction is gonna have to be take a step back and see if this thing is for you, and what are the things, let's talk about it. What are the things you've been interested in since a kid? What's been your trajectory over this time?
Awesome. Just to stick a pin, I, every semester I ask students how do they feel about science now. I ask them how they feel about it in the beginning and how do they feel about it now. And every now and then I get a student that says, I realize that science is not for me. And I could appreciate that, but usually it's coming from students who don't meet with me in the office. I just like if they had if she had come into the office and we had a conversation as to what to do, she would do it. But she would come perpetually and continually fail. And I would see this in multiple types of students. But I respect it because I realize that they don't even have the desire to meet in the office. They don't want it. They don't like it. They don't like it. And if you don't like it, it's best to find it out your first semester. If you like it enough though, you're gonna talk to somebody about it to improve yourself. That's what I'm learning. So
Hey, listen, when I wasn't doing well in it, I was confused. I was like, why is this not working? I was like, no, I do bio.
my
How am I
thing.
not understanding this? How am I
Yeah.
not understanding? I'm like, so I knew that, okay, no, this is the effort thing, bro. This is no, this is stuff, and you understand these concepts. You got it. This is an effort thing.
This is an effort thing.
That was for me.
Anybody else? What would you advise a young student or early career professional?
No, I think how you hit it right on the head. Like some people, like they get in it and they quickly decide like, okay, you know what, this isn't for me. Um, but there's some that make it through and
Mm.
still kind of don't want to do the work to like kind of excel, right? It's just kind of enough to maintain. But like the ones that like come and they're struggling and they really want to do good, it's just like for me, I just tell them to keep trusting the process. So if you actually go out you put the time in and you want to be great, then it'll just find you. Like if you're going in and you're doing a different pockets of what you're trying to do, you not so much even specialize, but you put your head down and you actually like really are intent on your craft, then some stuff just finds you. And I think that's what I typically say, because just like you said, nothing lasts forever. So one day you're just starting out, the next day you've been in it for 25 years.
Oh my gosh, it's so true.
You
I
see what I'm
promise you.
saying? And your 25
Absolutely.
year self shouldn't look like your first year self. And
Yeah.
so as long as you're going through the process and you're continually kind of developing, then yeah, you're always going to come out right on the other end. You know what I mean? Um, yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah.
And I would add, I just want to add to like so I like the way you stated that. So I'm gonna add say effort and process, because it's not,
Mm,
because you could be putting in effort, and you really just you need a process.
in the
You
process.
need a process of how to execute, and that's really what'll bring success.
And that's what mentors are for.
That's what the mentors will do,
The
right?
mentors and your professors, they'll give you the
Hmm.
process.
That'll
And
do it. But
they'll hold you accountable. They'll
that's the
hold you
thing.
accountable to the process.
That's the
That's
thing. I've
it.
heard people
Go
come
ahead.
to you be like, "Hey, how can I be great? Here, do this, do that, do this," and then you look and you say, "Hey, are you, And so, but the process, the
Yeah.
process.
Ryan, you got the last word.
Oh, I just tell them to quit. Then that look that I get when I say that, that lets me know if they really want to, because there's
Wow.
if you want, then
Right.
we can work on the effort, we can work on the
Hmm.
process, but they've got to be shocked that the audacity that I would tell them to quit. That lets me know that there's a moldable mind. Now, if I say quit
Mm.
and they're like, "You're right," then I know that our
That's,
conversation needs to stop. We
hey, right. I do the same thing. The only time I do that though for people who like complain about it a lot. So if
Yeah,
they come in, they complain about like, "Yo,
just quit.
this."
No, I want you to quit so that I can then do it and I can get that credit. No, 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 I'm not gonna like. Okay,
Yeah,
now
but
we're
no, it's
back in the
true.
work.
It's
Yeah.
true.
So
It's
some
true.
people just need that. I'm glad to hear that
It's
this
true.
team is about all this hug. Let's make nah. I'm gonna tell you to quit. I think everything that y'all said is very key. And that's a part of resiliency, is understanding that failure is a part of life. It's like breathing. We're not going to be great at everything. You're going to mess up. But one of the things I understood about science was that even in failure, there's a lesson. You now know how not to do it. You
That's
now
right.
know the steps that you don't, when you get to step 5, don't go to 6, because it's going to lead you to this. So you got to remind them about the basics of that. Everything is a step, it's a process. But they've got to want it first. And if they don't want it, then I'm wasting my time. I'm wasting their time trying to convince someone that doesn't want this. And so we'll just move on. So it's gotta give them some tough love and some shock therapy.
Yeah. Guys, this conversation was so rich. I'm going to close with my mom. She had a couple of questions. Does the organization have the same definition of minority staff and resilience as the employee do, especially in opposite sex supervision? I'm not understanding the question, Mother. Does the organization have the same definition of minority staff and resilience? Like, are you saying, like, is your question is, does resilience look the same in the context of somebody who's minority, somebody who is a woman, um, how people look at them? I really believe we're looked at differently.
Yeah, for me,
Um,
I think we have to be, and I like the way that you stated the question. I think is proper. I think we have to be sharper because our fit into culture isn't always as easy as the other folks because they just naturally fit into their culture. You see what I'm saying? So when we get in there, we're doing it on the basis of, all right, we know how to do the job. Like we can navigate our work, but we're not, most aren't going out and playing tennis and the golf and in the specific spaces, the lunches and all that. And maybe, I mean, I may be wrong, but I think that's, from my perspective, I think that's.
Yeah, we don't have our own identity, and we're constantly having to fit into other cultures, and then have to rewrite their narrative that they already have about us. So we have to work either harder in certain areas than we have to. We have to hold ourselves back and not be our authentic self. It's just so much that we have to think about every time we walk out the door. I know as a black man, I have to think this way. Maya, as a minority, black and a woman in this field, as a double minority, you have to think and move in a different way. I've now become your threat when I should be I when I should be your helper in order to help you get to where you're going. Because there's space for us all. There is space for us all. Whoever told us there's only one slot, that's because they wanted us to fight
Yeah, and
ourselves.
for me, I never look at it as like a negative thing, and I think it's because of just the perspective that I've had. Right, I've worked in places where it's like all black, all black business, right, and it's thriving. I've worked in spaces where it's not. I've worked, and so like I understand people wanting to work with people they're comfortable with, right? I understand people wanting to hang out with people they're comfortable with. Like that's never really, kind of rubbed me the wrong way. It's just you know, I always think that they're just, as long as um you come with the same level of respect. You see what I'm saying? So as long as I'm respected where I'm at, and as long as like the work is like you go there, knock like everybody's good, then that's really all you can have, because
Yeah.
like we have all kind of people from all kind of places where I work at, and so like there's no way. And so as long as the respect level is there, that's all is needed. But at the same time, that extra level of camaraderie, it accounts for something. You see what I'm saying? It accounts for something getting in the door. And as for our businesses, where like I may be able to navigate differently in those spaces, or is this their stuff where they can navigate how they, what I'm saying? And so yeah, that's, I don't know, that's.
Yeah,
Well,
the last thing my mom said was municipal employment. She's talking about working for the government. She worked for the city for 25 years as a in the public health department. Um, it's often misunderstood. It's not easy to climb the ladder of success. She became a supervisor, but I think it's hard to climb. You got to know people, but you got to also be willing. Because they were thinking like they were talking clinic manager to my mother. She's like, I don't want to do that. And so there's a certain breed of people, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but there's a certain breed of people that work for municipalities. So sometimes they don't want the
Yeah,
that
they be like, I'm good. I'm good. I'm
you know what I
sorry.
mean?
Yeah,
It's
yeah. Kara's not gonna be a nursing manager, right? Because she don't want to deal with that, And so she's gonna be right. She's good where she's at, And so yeah, I know what you're saying.
yeah, that's a certain. So it's like that. I think that's how it could be a little complex. But those of you who work in the municipalities will know. But I love municipalities. My job is I work for the state. The benefits are amazing. So it's like it's a delicate balance, or it used to be amazing. I don't know this world right now we live in. It's a different world right now, but
For now.
guys, it's a different animal. Guys, it's been a great conversation. Thanks so much. I hope those of you who are watching learned a lot about how to push through and be resilient, especially in the context of science, technology, engineering, and math. You guys have a good night. I am the phenomenal STEMist, and so are they.